Hello, aspiring data analyst. We have a great episode for you coming up where we talk to Brad Yarbro, who basically went from an economics student in college to a data analyst, kind of to a senior data scientist. We talk about everything on his journey that helped him get there, from going through a master's. Was it worth it or not? How much did it cost? What was the time investment? How did he use his network to actually land that job? And what role did a portfolio play in this whole process? If you're trying to land your first data job, you'll definitely want to check out this episode and see what principles that you can steal from Brad's journey and apply to your own. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Data Career Podcast, the podcast that helps aspiring data professionals land their next data job. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Welcome back to the Data Career Podcast. My guest today is Brad Yarbro, who's going to talk about his transition from a non-traditional background in kind of economics to a data analytics and then data science role. Brad today is a senior data scientist at Protective Life. Brad, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be on.
Okay, so you studied economics in college. Tell us about how you got your first data job.
Sure. Yeah, studied economics with a double major in mathematics, and I was hosted in the business school. And a friend introduced me to the idea of data analytics and data science in undergrad, and decided to pursue that. And I really didn't have the experience coming out of undergrad that I should have had to really land a data science role. That was back in 2017. So ended up going straight into a master's in applied statistics, and from there built the necessary sections to land a couple of offers and take my first data analytics job.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about some of those steps that you took, because like you said, you were studying economics, mathematics inside the business school, right?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. And what was your first data job you were able to land?
I really had no work experience up until when I started grad school. I took classes the first semester, and then over the summer I was getting married and I was staying in town. So I didn't take any internships based in any cool company's headquarters, but through a connection of a professor recommended I talk to the head of a research institute on campus, and he ran a data analytics lab. And I knocked on his door and I asked him, told him my experience. I was, econ and math background, working in statistics, interested in data analysis and data science, and asked if he had any work that I could work on over the summer. And he said they could probably find something for me to do. And he asked if I was willing to work for free initially. He said he'd try to pay me if he could, but I said, yes, I would work for free, obviously part-time, so I could get another part-time job that paid to make ends meet, but ultimately ended up landing kind of an internship in data analytics research that summer, and ended up paying $15 an hour, which was enough to kind of get by for now. But that internship actually turned into the graduate research assistantship that I took to pay for the rest of my master's program. So that was really my first paid role, was that summer internship.
Okay, there's so many awesome things there I want to dive into. The first one is, if you're a college student listening, this is a really good opportunity to try to emulate, try to recreate in your career. When you're a college student, there is a lot more opportunities going on. You just have to kind of go out and find it. So, this is when you were a master's student, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I completed my first semester of my grad school. So it was a 30-hour program, so about average of 10 hours of courses per semester. And I was going into the summer and was looking for some work to do.
Okay, cool. So for all our master's students listening, this is an opportunity for you. And for all of our undergraduates, this is an opportunity for you as well. I started kind of similarly to Brad, but back in my freshman year of college. Back when I was a freshman, I was really excited about just starting real life and being in college. And I was studying chemical engineering at the time, and I had no experience with chemical engineering at all. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, I want to figure out if I even like it. I want to start doing it. And so I actually cold messaged 20 professors and said, hey, can I come work in your lab? I didn't have any of that work experience either. And two ended up replying, and one ended up giving me a chance to work there after getting trained for 3 months for free. So I had to be willing to work for free in that case there. So there's lots of good opportunities when you don't have that experience to try to connect with one of these, professors or college research institutes. And there's usually good opportunities there. So I love that you did that. I think all of our masters and undergrad students listening to this can probably really benefit from that story. The other thing I really like that you did is you had to go and like talk to the professor face to face, right? Like you had to put some effort into it. It wasn't just like it was given to you, right? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the professor, or one of the professors, an admissions professor who helped me get into the program, I was just giving her just general things I need to know, and she told me I should go talk to this particular professor. So went to his door, just randomly called him in his office and sat down and told him what I was interested in and what I was trying to do, and just asked if there was anything I could work on. So it was totally unplanned, unscripted, just had to be willing to work and show eagerness to learn. And that really, got my foot in the door.
I love that you said the eagerness to learn, which a lot of people, when you're eager to learn, a lot of times that means you don't have the skills necessarily, right? And you think, oh man, no one's ever going to hire me, But actually, in the last episode that just came out with Megan McGuire, we talked to a hiring manager. That's one of the things that she said that she looks for is the eagerness to learn. Because in data, we both know, right, that you never can learn it all. So being eager to continue to learn as time goes on and to improve, I think is really important to your career as a data professional. So I like that you said the eagerness to learn kind of got you in the door. Okay, so you go and talk to this person, you convince them, hey, I'd work for free even, they end up paying you $15 an hour. And that eventually led to not so much of an internship, more of a more formal role while you were in grad school. And then what happened after you graduated?
Yeah, so prior to graduation, I was able to make connections through the Research Institute, and just with the skills I built there working in SQL and Tableau and R and a little bit of Python, was able to land the 3 job offers and ended up accepting one. And that's what I went into straight after graduation. So 2 offers with different banks and 1 offer with a defense contractor. So titles were varying from senior marketing data analyst, just a generic financial analyst. And then the offer I ended up accepting was actually supplier quality engineer for the defense contractor company. So ended up working there. And even though the title was supplier quality engineer, doing a lot of data analytics work on that job, mostly working in Python, SQL, Tableau, and Excel. So that was my next step after graduation, was going straight into that role.
Yeah, and that was supplier quality engineering. That you would never really guess that role has that much to do with data analytics, but it did, huh?
Yeah, I think a lot of roles out there and teams have data that they're looking to make sense of and really utilize. And this team acknowledged that and kind of sought me out in the interview process as far as what skills I could offer to kind of help them parse through the data that they had and, overall increase productivity as a team. So I was kind of the only one on the team doing the particular data analytics work, but it was definitely a lot of opportunity for data analytics in that role.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of roles that aren't necessarily titled as data roles, but really would function as data roles. When I worked at Exxon, my official title was optimization engineer, which doesn't have the word data in it, doesn't have the word analytics in it. But I spent all day, analyzing data, making statistical models, doing machine learning, programming, doing stats. It was very data centric, but you would never really guess from that title. So I think it's important to know that sometimes titles can be a little misleading. Out of curiosity, why did you take this supplier quality engineering role over the senior marketing analyst role? That sounds more data-y and it sounds more senior.
The role with the defense contractor it was in Texas. I'm from Alabama. So Texas was a little bit more climate similar than the other offer was from Ohio. And then the third offer was actually from Alabama as well. So wanted a change of scenery, but maybe not too much. So thought the career advancement opportunities would be there with the company. So ended up with the defense contractor.
Okay, I like that. Life's not all about your salary and money. So I think it's always good to take a holistic approach when looking at job offers and stuff like that. Why do you think you got those 3 job offers, or how did you end up like in those situations to get those offers?
Yeah, I definitely had built a little bit of chops as far as interview goes. I was able to answer the questions that they wanted answered, and some of them were, less really rigorously technical and more just what's your approach to probleming. But I think through the connections that I made in the program in grad school and the research connections that I made with professors, and they had previously hired students from this program before, so they knew the skill level of students coming out of the program, kind of what could be expected there. So as long as I didn't really totally drop the ball in the interviews, I think it was reasonable that they would give me a chance.
Okay, cool. Very nice. So you're in this role, you're doing all of this data work. It's not necessarily called that. It's not, it's not necessarily says the word data or analytics, but you eventually move into a senior data scientist role at this company. How did you make that transition from supplier quality engineering to senior data scientist?
Yeah, sure. So the jump I made at the first company was from kind of senior data analyst or working in supplier quality engineering to senior data analyst at the same company. And the whole time I was there, I was open and honest with my manager about my career goals as far as 5 and 10 year plan. Definitely wanted to be more in pure data science and analytics. So he knew that our team wasn't purely focused on that. We were just utilizing my skills to help the team overall. So after 1 year in that role, when it's kind of reasonable to transition within company, he encouraged me to seek other opportunities within the company. And then through sending out a few applications and meeting with a couple of different managers on other teams, ended up landing in supply chain management and working as a senior data analyst on a dedicated team that they had a role carved out that was, purely searching for that rather than integrating or embedding with a team that working on other things.
Okay, so being honest with your boss, like being upfront and talking about what your career plans long term was really key for that. And then it also sounds like networking with other managers and other, people at your company was probably pretty big in that transition as well, right?
Absolutely. People you meet along the way that you work on projects with that are on other teams, it's good to stay in touch and see what they're exposed to as far as other teams and opportunities. And actually, from the grad school program I came from, two of my friends ended up at the same company as well. So had exposure to the projects they were working on, was able to discuss with them and what potential opportunities there were. So, yeah, networking through school and through careers definitely helped out a lot.
Okay, and at this defense contractor, I know you won't be able to say exactly what you were working on, but in broad terms, what were some of the projects that you were working on? What were some of the problems that you were trying to solve, and what type of tools were you using to solve those problems?
Yeah, sure. Our main problem that we were solving was just quality defects coming through the manufacturing line at various points in manufacturing. And if they were determined to be caused by the supplier, was what my teams had to deal with. But spanning across all quality engineers, they would take several hours of their day in meetings just reviewing the raw images from these initial defects. And they really would forward those to another team based on who they thought should work that problem. So the project I worked on was integrating a machine learning model using, unstructured, structured, and image data to predict what the cause of the defect was, so we could bypass these multiple hours of human review and just forward that to the team that should work on it, who was the suspected cause of the defect. So that was really kind of automating a very manual process before. So that was the main project that I worked on, and ultimately analyzing and trying to sort these defects as to which ones were high impact that we should work first versus which ones were lower impact. We could wait until we had the opportunity to work on those.
And was that in the supplier quality engineering role?
Yeah, that was actually in the supplier quality engineer role. So there was another data analytics, data science team collaborating on this project. But since I expressed to my boss that I wanted to be more involved in that field, he let me take a key role on that project, providing feedback to the team, building the machine learning model, and providing the feedback to iterate on that development.
Okay, cool. I was going to say that sounds like a pretty advanced project. You were more like the domain expert or the subject matter expert, the SME, who was working with the data team to make sure that the data team, whoever was writing, those machine learning algorithms, were meeting the business needs that you are more familiar with than this machine learning engineer or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And I was able to really bridge the gap because I could talk about the machine learning and data analytics concepts, but also the quality engineering concepts. So it was good to be in that role.
I think this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily value or understand, that in big organizations, there's almost two types of data professionals. There's like a data professional that's on a data team, and then there's a data professional that's on a business team. And they both are really cool roles, and they're both valuable, but you might like one more than the other. So in this case, Brad was embedded in more of a business team doing data things, but really bridging the gap between the data and the business, versus you can sometimes have more pure, data professionals that are not as bridged as well to the business. So I think it's a really good point to bring in, because it's not something I knew when I went into industry. It was kind of the same way at ExxonMobil, where we had these like business data people, and then we had these data people. And both roles are awesome. They're a little bit different, but they can be really valuable, and you might gravitate towards one more than the other based off of your personality and skill set and experience. Okay, very cool. Let's talk about tech stack a little bit if you can. And this could maybe be in any of the roles you've had in the past. What tools have you used the most?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a short list. So starting in grad school, learned SQL and R and Tableau and Python as well. I thought that was important to learn, but it was easier to do the statistics homework in R. So definitely lean towards more heavy use of R. And then as far as career goes, once I landed kind of full-time working jobs, definitely started using Python more. SQL and Tableau were still relevant. And then ended up switching from senior data analyst to senior data scientist, and definitely use more SQL and Python at this point. And then our current enterprise tool is Power BI. So definitely had to make the switch between Tableau and Power BI. So those skills are transferable. And I would say the skills from R to Python are transferable. But the biggest thing really starting out is, pick one tool to learn.
Yeah, that's typically my advice as well, is if you know Power BI, you can learn Tableau and vice versa. And I think the gap between R and Python is a little bit bigger, but I think the principle still applies, that, really just focus on learning one of them, because once you learn one of them, you'll be able to figure out the other. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the Python R debate and battle. Which one do you like more? Which one do you feel like is the superior?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like Python more and think it's superior, but I think R is just so unique that if roles allow you to use R, you can really stand out as a candidate with particular R experience. So you really can't go wrong with learning either. And there's definitely pros and cons to each language, but the biggest mistake I found for early on was trying to learn a bit of both R and Python, and I became kind of intermediate in both languages, where if I would have just pushed one aside and said, I'll learn that later, I could have become more advanced and probably, you know, add more value in my roles just learning that one tool better rather than trying to learn them both. So I think that's just a takeaway I would have.
Yeah, I agree. I think focusing on one is probably the way to go. We teach Python first inside of the data analytics accelerator, because I think it's just more in demand than R. But I do respect the amount that you can get done in very few lines of code in R. Like R is almost easier, but just kind of doesn't go as far down the road. What about Power BI and Tableau?
I prefer Tableau, which currently my company is working with Power BI, so I'm a bit bitter about that. But yeah, definitely coming up to speed. They have very similar capabilities, but so far, just my about 5 years of experience in Tableau, prefer that.
Do you feel like that Tableau is just more aesthetic, or do you feel like it's actually easier to use?
I think both. It's more intuitive from what you're trying to get to, and then easier to use. Power BI relies more on the data model, from what I've learned, and Tableau has a little bit of flexibility as far as join data together, and their kind of data relationships can be a little changeable. So I was able to get to prettier looking, final dashboards in Tableau quicker than I've been able to in Power BI so far, but definitely still learning there. But my initial take is I prefer Tableau.
Okay, I could see that. I kind of agree. I like the Power BI layout a little bit more sometimes. Just I like that it's like you choose what graph you're making and then you click on the, whatever fields or columns you want to put, and you put them into the right position. Versus in Tableau, it's like a lot of the times I'm just like kind of dragging stuff on kind of randomly until it looks like how I want to. So I do kind of like the structure of Power BI. But if I only choose one, I probably would lean Tableau. It's also more in demand, just slightly, than Power BI. So that's why we do two modules of Tableau in the Data Analytics Accelerator, just because it's a little bit more in demand, a little bit easier to get started. Plus, keep in mind that when you're at home, a lot of people are using Macs.
Yeah.
And Power BI is not fun to get on a Mac.
Tableau Public is a cool spot for kind of working on portfolio projects. So I don't know if Power BI has something similar, but Tableau Public is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, that's true. Better community in Tableau as well. So you kind of mentioned what you were doing at this defense contractor. Basically, you guys were getting supplies from other companies. These companies, we'd want to make sure that these raw materials or supplies were up to snuff, that they were high quality, they didn't have defects, they didn't have anything wrong with them. So y'all were taking pictures of them and then analyzing the pictures, which is kind of interesting because people kind of don't realize this, but really pictures are just, at the end of the day, numbers. It's just, you have a bunch of different pixels. Those pixels are represented by an RGB value, a red, blue, green value, right? And those values are represented by a number of what? 0 to 99 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But those really, just a pixel is just a number. So we can actually do data analysis on pictures because pictures are just numbers, which is fascinating. So that's what y'all were working on there. Now at your current company, what, in big terms of, business problems, what type of business problems are you working on?
Yeah, I work at a life insurance located in Birmingham, Alabama, and work on underwriting related projects. So essentially, my major project is when you apply for life insurance, we try to predict how healthy you are. And if you pass the prediction, then we'll route you towards accelerated underwriting, which, if you've applied for life insurance, typically is a very extensive process. You have to do, lab work and urine analysis. And really, with this new technology we developed, that if you're predicted healthy enough, we will make you an offer on the spot and you don't have to go through the medical exam. So it saves time and saves you from the invasive process. But so I primarily work on that predictive model that predicts who we should, do full underwriting process and get the medical exam versus who can bypass that and be accelerated through the process. So we, use a lot of different data products to make that prediction. So it's definitely, I guess, big data is not really a big topic anymore, but we have a vast amount of data we can use to make that prediction, and definitely helps with the whole business goal.
Gotcha. Cool. So you're basically taking in factors, things like, age, where you live, maybe how much you exercise, maybe your already existing weight, and you're able to predict like almost like a health score for someone and decide on, how much we should insure this person for.
The underlying
Very
goal
cool.
would be to predict mortality, but we don't really have that number exactly because we don't have the whole United States population as our customer base, but we're able to make predictions based on historical underwriters' evaluations. So we're predicting on, previous rules and human input, trying to get a machine to learn those patterns.
Okay, cool. So you basically predict when people are going to die.
We'd like to be able to.
Man, that's kind of grim. Using data to predict death. I like that.
Yeah, it can be
That's
grim, but I think
very,
the opportunities when you seek life insurance is kind of big positive events as far as buying a
that's
house
true.
or having a child. So you definitely have to keep in mind though what your data represents, because when we look at claims data, that is, the death of a person, loss of a life, loss of a loved one. So when you're looking at the spreadsheets or, the cells in your Jupyter notebook, definitely zoom out and think of what the data means and what impact that has on people's lives.
For sure. Very interesting. Okay. One other thing I want to talk about is what role has a portfolio played in your data career journey?
Yeah, I've definitely been able to talk about and work on various projects along the way inside of school and inside of work and outside of work. And initially, the portfolio that I developed helped me land my first role in data. I was actually working on some Tableau based projects with my graduate research. And I thought to kind of screenshot some sanitized versions, taking out the sensitive data, but screenshot those and store them on my iPad in a portfolio. and have them at the ready for interviews. And when I was interviewing for one of the roles that I was trying to get coming out of grad school, I brought the iPad with me into the interview, and interviewers asked, what I had worked on as far as data analytics projects, and I was able to pull that out and show them specific deliverables that I had and the way the dashboards could interact and interpret the data. So that was really the starting point of seeing the value of having worked on projects and being able to show them to hiring managers and interviewers.
Very cool. That's awesome. It's a great idea to have it on the iPad and use it in the in-person interviews. That's a very cool method. It's like, here's the tangible evidence. I have it right here. It's almost, you can touch it. That's how tangible it is. That's great. Okay, great. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was your master's degree. So you have a master's in, let's see, in statistics.
Yeah,
correct?
master's in applied statistics, and the program was a little bit more theoretical than applied, but it was called applied statistics, and definitely walked away with good skills.
What was your favorite part about it, and what do you wish that it had a little bit?
Yeah, my favorite part, maybe, I think the rigorous kind of technical mathematical aspects was my favorite. It gave me really good understanding and problem solving of the foundations to these machine learning. So that was my favorite part. What was your other question?
What do you wish it had?
Back in 2017, when I started the program, it was mostly the courses were SAS based. So I wish there would have been more coverage of R and Python back then. I think, more and more now in 2023, R and Python are, having a seat at the table as far as courses covering them. But back then, R and Python wasn't as heavily emphasized. I had one elective course in R, and all of the Python that I learned was self-learned during my graduate school.
Okay, interesting. And then what was the cost and the time investment?
Yeah, the time investment, it's really hard to estimate, but the cost was 30 hours of courses, which corresponded to about $16,000 of tuition for in-state students, and it was about 3 times that amount for out-of-state students. So you could say $48,000, and that spanned about 3 semesters of work, so 30 hours in the program. So really the program, though, was kind of full-time. Like, I had time outside of class to work on graduate research, but beyond that, there wasn't really much opportunity for side jobs just due to the homework and amount of study involved. So it's definitely a significant time investment. And as far as public state school, I think the tuition was relatively affordable, but for out-of-state students, that's definitely a high number.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you're looking at a year and a half full-time, around between $16,000 and $45,000, depending on in-state versus not in-state tuition. Okay. That's great. Well, perfect. So that was one of the springboards. Your network was one of your springboards, being brave and knocking on doors and asking for opportunities, seeking them out, not waiting for opportunities to come to you, all kind of led you to where you're at today, which is senior data scientist role at this life insurance company. I think that's an absolutely incredible story. I think there's a lot that people can take away from this, kind of getting that stepping stone job, working a role that didn't have the word data, didn't have the word analytics in there, but really, involved data analytics. I think that you shared a lot of very useful things for our audience today, Brad, and I'm grateful. Any other last words you'd want to give someone who's trying to kind of do what you've done in the past?
Yeah, nothing in particular. I mean, there's various ways to get to where you want to go. I think you just have to be determined and willing to learn and really carve out the time to learn and, work on projects. And I know following Avery's content has been helpful to me. Yeah, there's a lot of different paths to get to where you want to go. Don't really limit yourself or think that you can't do something based on what you've seen others do. So just work on projects and continue learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So that is this week's episode. Great having Brad on the podcast. I hope that you can take some of the things that Brad talked about, knocking on doors, using the portfolio, and really nailing the interview can help you in your data career journey. If you guys want some extra help in your data career journey, I have some resources for you below in the show notes. I'm starting up my newsletter again, which I'm really excited about, which is going to be one actionable weekly thing that you can do to improve your data career in your inbox once a week. Check it out in the show notes down below. And of course, I also have one of my webinars coming up as well. You guys can sign up for that for free. I'm basically going to sit down for you for 45 minutes and teach you my thoughts on how to actually land your first data job. I hope to see you guys there live in one of those webinars.